My name is David Newman. I'm the Managing Director of BBIA. Welcome to this webinar on a sunny Friday morning during the second or third phase of lockdown. You know things are getting back to normal when England are losing a test match, and that is happening at the moment. So life is continuing back to normal. This is the first in a series of webinars which Futamura is organizing together with BBIA. And this first webinar will be talking about you, the customer, and what you see when you get, as a consumer, compostable packaging, how that is made from the farm to your shelf. And the next webinar coming up for your diary on the 20th of July will be about what happens to that compostable packaging when you want to, when you finish with it, when you want to throw it away. And here we will be talking about the end-of-life solutions for compostable packaging, how they're identified, collected, and recycled and revalorized through organic recycling. So put that in your diary, 20th of July at 2 p.m. Coming up shortly. And a full agenda for that will be circulated in the next few days. Now, coming back to this morning. Thank you, Rob. Coming back to this morning, we have 4 excellent speakers who will take you through the whole chain of compostable packaging. And we will start with Caroline Herveau, who is from Planet Organic, one of the retailers in London which have adopted compostable packaging. So she will first talk about why they have done that. Then we will go right to the beginning of the chain to Kieran McSweeney, who is the Managing Director of Sphere here in the UK. And Kieran will talk about how compostable packaging, how compostable polymers are made from their factories in Europe. Then we will go to Andy Sweetman, who is the chairman also of BBIA, but the marketing manager for Futamura. And Kieran will be talking about what they do when they get these polymers and how they convert polymers and cellulose into films, which then Mark Shaw from Parkside Flexibles will tell us how they convert into the products which Caroline is going to talk about now and that you see on her shelves. So we will have the sort of full circuit there of how compostables are produced from the beginning to the consumer. So I think there's no more for me to say except to welcome you all and to welcome Caroline as our first speaker.
Hi everyone, I'm just going to share my screen. There we go. So for those who are not familiar with Planet Organic, so Planet Organic was founded in 1995 when we opened the first organic and natural supermarket in the UK, fully certified by the Soil Association. So today we operate 8 stores in London, and we recently acquired the London-based chain As Nature Intended, bringing our estate to 15 stores in London. Customers shop in our stores for its convenience, organic, healthy, and natural products. And my role as own brand manager is to develop, launch, and distribute a range of healthy, convenience, and innovative lines under the Planet Organic brand across our stores, but also through online channels and export markets. So today I want to speak about the company, how is the company moving forward in its sustainability agenda, and specifically with the help of compostable packaging. So we're going to discuss the path from customer awareness to customer demands, and how did we progressively respond to it. We're then going to explore how the compostable solution is responding to convenience as a sustainable alternative to plastic. And finally, I'll go through what it means in terms of brand positioning, but also what are the challenges that comes with moving into compostable. So so the way we think about plastic has been transformed. Consumer awareness to plastic waste in oceans and landfills is driving the change. 46% of Britons feel guilty about the amount of plastic they use, and even more, 82% are actively trying to reduce the amount they throw away. So these are just quick facts highlighting a shift in how plastic is perceived in our society. Consumer awareness and concern about plastic waste and its detrimental impact on the planet have never been higher, and I'm sure you've seen it across multiple platforms on LinkedIn, social medias, and on the street and so on. The whole way we think about plastic has been transformed, and I think it's unlike climate change, which is quite vague and vast and apocalyptic. Plastic is smaller and it's more tangible, and it's in your life right now. So customers tend to guilt about their plastic consumption. Then the second point is that plastic is, or at least that's my BA's point of view, is that plastic is one of the worst materials for recycling. It is cheap, it's hard wearing, and the fact that it's readily available is what makes it a burden on the environment. So for those who, I think it's important to reiterate the facts and the figures, which is that we produce 5 million tons of plastic waste every year in the UK, with only 26% of it being recycled. And that's unlike glass or steel or even aluminium that can be melted and reformed nearly an infinite number of times. Plastic, by contrast, degrades each time it is recycled. So how are we responding to this growing awareness and demand for alternatives? At Planet Organic, our mission is to promote health in the communities where our stores are located, and that goes by trying to provide a healthier and what we call the lower impact food shopping model. We really want to inspire our customers to eat well, live better, and we want to innovate and make sure that we position ourselves at the forefront of the market when it comes to sustainability. So with that in mind, we had to respond strategically and practically to offer sustainable choices to our customer. So not only do we select products based on health, nutrition, diet, but we've also undertaken throughout the years various actions so that we are able to offer that new shopping model to our customers. So for instance, we haven't used any plastic bag for over 12 years. We have an unpackaged section in all our community stores, which means that you can buy without the use of packaging. We offer loose fruits and vegetables. We have a zero edible food waste policy, which means that at the end of every day, we donate all our edible food to volunteers who then redistribute the food to local communities. And then lastly, the step we've taken and which involves Compostable, that we've launched a industry first plastic-free packaging for all our Planet Organic cardboard products. So that's from red rice to apple chips and flaked almonds and gluten-free oats. So it's a range of 120 SKUs, so 120 products. And then we are also working into transitioning all our impulse snacking lines into a home compostable packaging. So that is already in motion. We have 5 ranges out of 10 packed in a plastic-free packaging. So all of that is just to explain that it's a holistic approach when it comes to sustainability, and then we'll see later how Compostable is playing into that. But the second aspect of this is that we are trying to go against this throwaway attitude that is really the problem with plastic. So we really try and educate our customers through various platforms, events, social, in-store, merchandising, incentives. So we have an incentive if you bring your own cup, you get a 20p deduction on your hot drinks. And then the food waste donation is also one aspect of it. So when we looked at our sustainability agenda and strategy, we are seeing compostable as a way to offer convenient, sustainable choices to our customers, because we know that we still rely, and our customers rely on convenience, and often that goes through a single-use item. So we also know on the flip side that single-use has the most impact on the environment, no matter what it's made of. And I would say that especially the grocery industry is one of the most visible sources of single-use plastic. So consumers are dealing with it every day in their kitchen, and they almost feel complicit in the problem. So we saw compostable packaging as a solution, mostly because the film and flexible packaging used for single-use items amount about 400,000 tons of plastic in the UK per year, and only 4% is currently recycled. So these films and those flexible packaging are extremely difficult to collect and process, and often they contain food, which makes them impossible to recycle in the plastic waste stream. So compostable packaging really provides a smart solution. It shifts away from the inefficient mechanical recycling stream into a nature-based solution that can be returned safely to the earth. So once we had settled on offering convenience in a compostable packaging to our customers, it really took us, the reality of it is that it took us years of researching, testing, redeveloping to finally introduce that range of 120 organic cardboard ingredients into a home compostable packaging. Being organic also meant that we had another set of strict criteria to fulfill. So we needed to make sure that the packaging used was compostable, but was also coming from GMO-free renewable resources. So that was almost like an added complexity. So the bag we've used is certified by the TUV, it's home compostable, and even though we hope it don't end up here, they are certified as marine compostable too. And really what we see as the progress there is that these bags, when they break down, they will leave no toxic residue, and like biodegradable or plastic packaging. Oops. So is that my last slide? Yes. So here, you've understood that what we've achieved with compostable range of products is fitting right into our ethos. So our range of healthy and high quality and specialist products are really what differentiate us from our competitors. But we also strongly believe that sustainability is a way to show consumers that we listen to them, that we care for their needs, and that we are thoughtful about how we produce their products. We really believe that with the right messaging, sustainability can really represent a premium indicator, such as quality, superior function, uniqueness. And we also know that 50% of those who will pay extra for sustainable products and those who check the packaging for sustainable labeling are millennials, and they are our core customer base. So although some retailers and some brands continue to shy away from making the packaging more eco-friendly due to increased costs, we are seeing this, we are offsetting this move financially by using it as a clever marketing tool. So we really see it as a long-term strategy that will position ourselves as a market leader. Now, all of that, and you see the lovely comments from our customer, is not without saying that the shift to a more sustainable offering is not without challenges. And I think it's important to highlight, not only for retailer, but for brands, which we are, that it's really a learning curve. And I said it took us a couple of years, and it's still taking us many efforts to reach the goal we set for ourselves. So we've learned from brands that have got it wrong. I think one interesting example is how PepsiCo launched their biodegradable bags in the US for their brand of snack. I think it was Sun Chips, and they were forced to withdraw that range after the customers complained that the packet was too noisy. So you are really facing demanding customer, well-informed, but also, again, still having that convenience in mind. So those same customers that will praise us for our efforts, they are the ones that will let you down if you don't live up to their expectations. So I wanted to mention the key challenges that we've observed. And I think the first and most important challenge is scale. We are at Planet Organic still a fairly small player in a fairly niche market. And when it comes to packaging, our power of influence is actually quite limited. So if you look at big players such as Nestle or Danone or Unilever, they really are the ones that have the power to influence. But their actions, at least from my point of view, are still quite limited. So you will see them launching one of their worst performing range into a compostable packaging, gain coverage, but really keep all of their best selling products into a plastic packaging. So the way I see it is like to truly achieve a significant progress towards sustainable packaging, we need FMCG companies and retailers to become more aggressive in their approach. We need package manufacturers to lower their MOQs, their minimum order quantity, reduce the price, and increase availability. And then the third kind of need is the government. So we need them to implement the regulations and improve the waste management processes. Because really one of the other key challenge beyond the price and beyond the shorter shelf life that working with a compostable packaging will bring you is to find a product manufacturer that are open to work with such materials. So to give you an idea, it took us over 6 months to get a manufacturer to work with a compostable duplex material that Parkside, who is going to speak later, supplied us with. So we tested, we retested. It took us another 6 months to get that packaging right. And overall, from concept to launch, working with compostable means you add up 6 to 8 months to your normal launch pattern. And I think for smaller brands that are usually the first one to take the risk to launch in compostable, they are often facing those challenges later, too late in their process. And then lastly, and it fits right into the educational aspect of this topic, is the implication on the overall branding strategy that any packaging material change or design has. Because the look and feel and the eye-catching effect of a compostable packaging is very different than a glossy plastic packaging. And this is the reality of it. You have some buyers that will tell you that the packaging is not noticeable on the shelf. Yes, because you use compostable ink. You really need the retailers to push for a plastic-free merchandising, which we do in our stores, for instance. And you need people to be aware of those challenges. And then
Caroline,
finally,
I'm going to bring you to a stop. So finish, please.
Yes.
Conclude.
Sorry, I'm just finishing
conclude.
on from a retail point of view. So our buyers are now considering packaging as a key element when they source the products. So we have always played a role of mentor with small brands, and this applies to packaging as much as recipe development. So we tend to observe that by supporting smaller brands to make the switch to compostable, it also benefits us as a retailer. And I'm going to end here, and I hope that was helpful.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. There's a couple of quick questions I'm going to pick up on now for you before we pass to Kieran. Firstly, just an observation. And we can't expect everybody to know the terminology, but there is no such thing as marine compostable. There may be marine biodegradable, but not marine compostable. So that's just so that when next time you come to that certification, you know the correct terminology.
The experts are coming. That's fine.
Well, you know, I don't know anything about retailing, so we're all learning. The second question is, some people have asked, how do your customers react to having unpackaged food in the times of the COVID-19 virus? Are they worried about that?
They are, but we've actually taken some measures to avoid any risk of contamination. It actually has been proven that there is the virus really don't transfer into the unpackaged section. So we use gloves. In some of our stores, we just have our staff handling the unpackaged themselves. Okay.
The other question, just quickly for you, is you use the terminology and you use the labeling plastic free. And several people have asked, what does that mean? And is that an official type of certification? What does it mean, plastic free?
So you do have an official certification, which is the plastic free logo that you can see on some products. I think it's just a simpler messaging for our customer base. That often understands better a plastic-free messaging rather than home compostable TUV certified. And it helps in terms of merchandising, because then you can put on your shelf glass jars along with cardboard or compostable, and this kind of fits under the plastic-free umbrella from a customer point of view.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that in the panel discussion. For everybody who's asking me, of course, all the presentations and the video of this webinar will be on the BBIA website, and presumably on the website also of the speakers who are with us today. So you don't have to take screenshots. You will get all the presentations on our website in a few days' time. The next speaker is Kieran McSweeney. Thank you, Caroline. We'll come back to you on the panel. The next speaker is Kieran McSweeney, also a board member of BBIA and the Managing Director of Sphere Consumer Products here in the UK. Over to you, Kieran.
Thanks, David. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. And good morning, everybody. Thanks again, David. I'm the Managing Director of Sphere Consumer Products here in the UK, part of the Sphere Group. My brief today is to talk a little bit about feedstocks, production and applications in relation to compostable resins. Before I do that, for those of you who are not familiar with Sphere Group, just a quick overview of the group for you. Sphere Group is a privately owned group where head office is based in Paris, in France, and we have 15 manufacturing sites across Western Europe, and you can see turnover and number of employees there. We actually supply a wide variety of products, but in relation to today's presentation, I'm going to focus on the main product range that we supply, which is that of bags, and we supply refuse bags, fruit and vegetable bags, freezer, carrier bags, etc. And we're manufacturing in the region of 150,000 tons per annum. And you can see on the slide there that the share of that in terms of bioplastic and compostables is just coming up to roughly about just under 30% of that mix. Now, in terms of the manufacture of those particular products, we are quite unusual as a group in that we are vertically integrated in the supply of our resins for our bioplastics and our compostable resins, and they are manufactured. If I move my my screen here. They're manufactured in our factory here in Germany, which is called Biotech, which is based in Emmerich. And Biotech is a leading European manufacturer that develops and produces plant-based polymers for film and rigid applications. And the product that comes out of Biotech, you'll hear me refer to it, we name that, or we call that Bioplast. We're talking today about compostables in the marketplace, and before I go on, I just wanted to say these are the areas and the sectors that we operate across Europe for Sphere. So we're operating across retail, professional and local authority and public sector. And the reason I threw this slide up is really just to say that we are now selling compostable solutions in terms of finished products across all these market sectors. And that has significantly changed over the last 5 to 7 years. So examples of that would be carrier bags, would be food preparation bags for back of restaurants, food waste collection bags, which we're selling food caddy bags through retail, which is customers are buying off the shelf, and also into local authorities. So products now and compostable products are going right across multi-category areas. So to talk a little bit about the raw materials and feedstocks for the resins that we manufacture. Firstly, really, I just wanted a very quick and top-line reminder of what are bioplastics. And bioplastics are a family of different materials with different properties and different applications. We say that bioplastics can either be bio-based, biodegradable, or they can be both. When we talk about bio-based, we're talking about materials that are derived from biomass, i.e. plants, and you can see on the screen there examples such as starch and cellulose are clearly that. When we talk about biodegradable, we're then talking about the chemical process during which microorganisms in the environment convert into natural substances such as water and CO2. And that really is the basics or the basis for creating our products and in effect baking the cake and creating recipes for our products. If we drill down into that just a little bit further, a more complicated chart there, which is actually showing what I wanted to show with this chart is that it is a very technical and it is a complicated a process. But the key thing is when we are creating our different materials, that the whole thing that governs what we do and the polymers that we create all depends on the customer requirement and their requirements for their manufacturing techniques and equipment, the applications for which they want the product to be used, whether that's flexible applications, whether that's food, whether that's rigid applications. And of course, the other thing, which I will come back to at the end of the presentation, is the percentage of bio-based. So that's the natural plant-based resource that is required within the product. And that is something that is clearly important and determines where we get to in terms of our mix. Okay, so in terms of we at Biotech and within our products, I'm going to focus in on the feedstock here. So we use in our bioplast production, we use starch, and that is taken from potatoes, and those potatoes are grown industrially. It's important to state that those potatoes are not of a non-edible variety and are not fit for human consumption. So we're not interfering with food crop and human consumption there. They're not non-GMO, and when grown, the particular type of variety of potatoes that we use have a natural resistance to dryness, so they need less rain and watering. And then once they're harvested, they go through a process. They're washed, dehydrated, crushed, and it gives us an ultra white starch extraction, and then we take that into our factory in Biotech in order to be compounded. with copolyesters. One of the questions, I know I've been with the business for 5 years, and one of the questions I first asked is why potatoes? Why do we go potatoes? There's different types of starches. Well, the answer to that is a chart probably not many people have seen. I haven't seen it until recently myself. It's a potato production chart, which shows potato production in terms of tons of production per square kilometre across Europe. And you can see that I mentioned earlier that we're in Germany, where my geography is right, we're somewhere around here. And you can see that therefore, in terms of potato manufacturing, we are in what is called the potato belt. I never knew such a thing existed, but we are in the European potato belt. So what that does for us is it gives us great access to supply of raw material in that part of Central Europe. The other reason that we use potato starch in our products is that when we have our finished product, you actually get an odorless finished product, which is quite different to other starches that are used. For example, cornstarch, there will be an odor in the finished product. With potato, it is odorless. So that's a little bit about feedstocks. One other thing to add here is that in addition to the crops that are being used, there are various projects underway across Europe, and we're always want to talk about adding value in our chain of compostables. There's various products underway across Europe at the moment, looking at the collection of industrial food manufacturing waste. So, for example, potato peelings from food factories or crisp factories, and then taking those potato peelings, which would otherwise go to waste, and actually taking them and trying and extracting starch from them. So that's again another example of how we're trying to add value into this whole chain. One thing that always comes up when we talk about feedstocks is the eternal question of land use for bioplastics. And some of you watching may be familiar with this chart, but it has been updated. It's a chart from European Bioplastics, and it talks about land use and the estimation of total land use for that contributes towards bioplastics. And if you grill down there, you can see there's a global land area and a global agricultural area. And if we look at the global agricultural area, you can see that out of that total, that for materials usage is about 2%. And then if you drill down further, the actual usage and the land use for bioplastics as a proportion of that material use is actually a fraction. And you can literally see there that in currently, or the 2019 figure, is 0.016% of that agricultural area. And by 2024, even with the growth, it still remains only 0.021%. So very, very small percentage. However, it is actually really important. I said earlier in the presentation, we're a French company, so I couldn't have a presentation without getting the Eiffel Tower into this somehow. The ratio is equivalent to a cherry tomato underneath the Eiffel Tower. However, it's a bit of call out for me when we talk about feedstock and sustainability, is that as our industry grows, it is critically important that sustainable sourcing is a prerequisite for us, and that we do all have a responsibility for the development of good agricultural practice and social standards. And I think that's really important. There are already some independent certification and sustainability criteria that are out there, and examples such as ISCC, the International Sustainability and Carbon Certification, and the Sugarcane Initiative as well. So that's really important for us to be aware of. So when we have our starches and the other materials I showed you earlier, I'm not sure, I'll take some people may be familiar with this, but this is the process in the factory. So our raw material is coming in, and then we have our dosing into our machines of a variety of different components, and they can be in different forms, whether that's pellets or powders or flakes or liquids. It then goes into an extrusion phase, which is a twin screw extrusion, and effectively this is a mixing phase where we are adding temperature, taking the internal temperature to about 170 to 200 degrees C to achieve a homogeneous blend. And what we are Can everybody see that? Yeah. What we are looking for is a homogeneous blend and then going to granulation. And here is an example of that. So we have our material feeding, our continuous mixing here, and granulation coming out the other end. It's similar to making spaghetti. You have the strings going into water cooling, and then they're cut for palletizing and packaging. Everything we do is overarching, is all around certification. And again, I throw this slide up because I constantly hear that there is no standard. There is no standard in Europe. There is no standard in the UK for compostable materials. That's not true. There is the overarching standard of EN 13432, and we have also our other TUV Austria and our other accredited labs. This is what we're looking to achieve: biodegradation. We also have our compostability standards in terms of industrial and home. I see David waiting in the wings there to get me. One final thing I would like to just bring up, and it's really important shout out from me, and that is about bio-based laws. You can see here in the UK we do lag behind laws and legislation. It has driven demand in France and in other countries. And you can see here that also in law in those countries we have levels of bio-based which are really pushing up. I highlight this because it's very relevant. We are looking for equivalence. The new plastic tax, which is implemented in April 2022, at the moment, compostables are going to be liable to pay that £200 a tonne levy because they cannot have a recycled content of 30%, which is required by the tax. We are pushing to have an equivalence of minimum 30% bio-based content to have compostables exempt from that tax. So be aware of bio-based. Yeah, the other advantage, obviously, is the more bio-based, the more sustainability we have. And finally, from me, just some applications of our products. And there you can see both flexible and rigid applications. Bioplast, you'll see there, I put Bioplast 300, and the background there's a Bioplast magazine, and that is mailing film. If you pick up The Guardian tomorrow from your local newsagents, or you have Which magazine, or National Trust, or RSPB, you will see them in home compostable mailing film. We have other applications there for fruit and vegetable bags, food waste bags, carrier bags, rigids. So really different materials for different applications. David, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kieran. And we'll be coming on to some of those applications when we talk to Andy now and Mark. Kieran, question. The inks and glues, of course, in a compostable product also have to be certified, don't they? So, you know, they must also compost.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the whole value chain, and there's quite tight regulations around the fact that all the components that are going in need to go through and pass that compostability
and be non-toxic too. To all the listeners, you've asked me many questions here about the end of life of these materials, industrial versus home composting, etc. Well, that is going to be the subject of the discussion on the 20th of July. So I'm not going to ask our panelists questions on those issues now. We will come to those later. And to the question which Lucy has asked about GMO-free fermentation, I don't think any of our panelists are technically qualified enough to answer, Lucy, but I can certainly try to look for that answer for you later. To the question, are bioplastics a solution for all plastics? Well, of course, obviously not. And Andy Sweetman will talk more about that now. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you, David. Can you hear me all okay? Good. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm going to, so I get my screen working properly. Okay, just briefly tell you a little bit about Futamura. The cellulose production unit, which I'm part of, is based in the UK.
Excuse me interrupting, Andy, but you need to go full screen there.
I thought I was, my apologies.
That's okay. I'm glad I'm not doing it because I don't know how to do it either.
Okay, does that work this time?
It's not full screen, but let's go ahead.
So the group manufactures 6 different product lines, but 3 of those are cellulosics. So we are real experts in cellulose technology. And the cellulose film that I'll cover today is called NatureFlex. And we manufacture that on a global basis in the UK, the USA, and we can manufacture it as well in Japan. I'm going to set out really to try and answer 3 questions during the course of the next 10 minutes or so. First of all, do we actually need compostable packaging at all? Secondly, if we have these materials, do they actually work? And we heard some comments earlier on about performance. And finally, the key element, which is where's the best place to use these materials in the short term? And leading on from that as well, just to echo something that Caroline was saying, which is how do you get best value from the use of these materials as well? The first thing to say is, do we need packaging? Yes, we absolutely do. The world categorically requires packaging. It transports, it protects, it reduces overall waste, it extends shelf life, it informs the customer about how to use the product, about any allergen issues and ingredients and so on, has a massively important role. But we do know that there are problems that are associated with the use of packaging. We know that there's the management of the plastics industry over the years has not been good enough, and we need to do better. And I know that the plastics industry themselves are working hard on this. But we're all part of this question. We're all part of the packaging industry. In certain ways, we have a real challenge. First of all, packaging's value largely ends the moment you consume the contents. So there's an argument to say everything we do is fundamentally rubbish by the end. So we've got to bring real value to it. In some ways, there are some challenges making it worse. Our thirst for convenience is driving an increase in packaging, single-serve portions, sachets, and capsules. And speaking as someone who's spent his entire career in the conventional flexible packaging industry, that has one big advantage in that it massively saves the amount of material and it lightweights the overall packages through the supply chain, but it does also make recycling infinitely more difficult. And just to highlight really, I mean, if you imagine the moving coffee capsules, can it be acceptable nowadays to have coffee capsules which are combining a huge range of different materials which make recycling fundamentally impossible? So packaging, yes, but we need to do it better. Now, actually, is organics and is compostables required at all? Well, there's understandably much focus on packaging waste and plastic waste and so on, but it's just worth having a look at the figures. And these are the figures for Europe, but they're truly the same the world over. The fact is that organic waste, so food waste, garden waste, and so on, is actually 1/3 of the waste that we generate on a municipal basis. And so you've got a huge problem there with organic waste, but if you deal with it properly, you turn that huge problem into a huge opportunity. And just some little headlines there. So for every ton of organic waste that you stop sending to landfill, and instead you take it through organic recycling methods such as anaerobic digestion and aerobic composting, you'll save roughly the equivalent of a ton of CO2 equivalent emissions. You can create enough energy to power a family home for a month, and you can create fertilizing digestate, which when you mix it with other compost can help you to produce soil improvement materials, improving water retention, improving the carbon nitrogen ratio, and reducing the need for fossil-based fertilizers. So there's some massive, massive benefits if we can get our organic waste effectively through to organic recovery. NatureFlex, the product that we manufacture, is a little bit of a hybrid. It looks like plastic because it's transparent, but actually it's derived from renewable forestry, and the only forestry sources we'll use will be either FSC or PEFC certified. Its raw material is effectively forestry, so it's more like paper in terms of its sourcing and its heat resistance and so on. But we share a lot of common ground with the bioplastics industry, and we absolutely share the vision that what we're looking to do here is take materials from soil, take them through the packaging phase so they have a useful role in keeping food fresh and safe, and then ultimately bring that material back to soil again as part of the soil improvement process through composting and anaerobic digestion and so on. Just a few key highlights. Technical properties. So one thing that's quite unique with NatureFlex is our ability to deliver plastic-like moisture barrier, but we can also make it permeable. So we have the ability to play tunes with the moisture barrier characteristics. We have very good gas and aroma barrier. It's quite flexible in terms of its optical properties. So we have clear versions, metallized and colors. And one of the big uses for it today in terms of its use in biolaminates, which you'll hear a bit more of later on, is through things like its heat resistance properties. And it's suitable for running on most packaging machines, horizontal, vertical, overwrap and twist wrap machines. As you'd expect, it has all of the right certifications in place. So it's certified industrial compostable, home compostable. It's also suitable for anaerobic digestion, and it's water biodegradable as well. So where should we use these materials? Well, first of all, a shout out to the UK organisation WRAP, who earlier this year published a very good document on compostable packaging, plastic packaging. And key summary of that, they made some specific recommendations where they saw the best fit in the first stages. Things like food waste caddy liners, fruit and vegetable labels, tea bags, coffee pods, ready meal trays, closed loop food service situations. I think what you'd say there is in each case you have a common denominator, and that is in each of those situations you've got contamination of the packaging by the product inside it. So even if you've got hold of it at the end, your best way of getting the value back from that packaging waste is as part of a composting system rather than a conventional recycling issue, just simply due to the nature of the degree of contamination of the packaging in that phase. So that's WRAP's first recommendations, and I would agree with every one of those wholeheartedly. What I think we'll see next is drawn to some degree from that, but I'm following some of the same logic, but going a little bit further. And so I would complement that list with some other formats. And in each of these cases, we're talking about ones where it's not actually practical to recycle these through conventional recycling methods. So we're talking about things like small format sachets and wrappers, so your confectionery wrappers, twist wraps, condiment sachets, and so on. You've then got a huge amount of laminates in the packaging industry where, for technical reasons, we're mixing incompatible materials. That gives us excellent shelf life characteristics, but it makes recycling nigh on impossible. So we would certainly see biolaminates as being of real interest. A ready meal tray, well, you can't have a ready meal tray if you haven't got a lid over the top. So that's a natural fit. And of course, for those companies that operate in organic foods, fair trade, health and wellness, and so on, there's a real natural fit between the idea of natural food and a naturally derived packaging solution. So let's just have a look at those in some detail then. So some examples that fit directly with the WRAP recommendation. Teapig's example on the left-hand side there, you can see those are certified compostable tea bag materials and actually being kept fresh to get the right shelf life by the use of a compostable sachet. The two on the right-hand side there, you'll see sandwiches and you'll see ready meal trays for, in that particular case, I think that's hospital catering. And again, you've got that issue of the fact that the materials are fundamentally getting contaminated by the food waste remains that are generated. I visited a composting facility a few years back, and they told me that the single biggest problem they had with compostable packaging was fruit labels. And that's because they weren't compostable at all. They were just classic plastic labels that had been stuck on fruit and vegetables. And that's a problem which is now really, it's a fast moving market sector now, replacing those fruit labels with compostable solutions. And then we have compostable coffee pods, which is another fast growing sector. I'm just highlighting just how technical some of these applications are getting now. So our film is present in the capsules in terms of providing the barrier properties in the lidding solution. And you're also now starting to see it being used in mold labeling applications where the film is wrapped around the outside of the pod and it provides barrier to the whole of the pod, and obviously as well the ability to put in different colors or designs. to that. And the ones that show us going just beyond the original wrap guidance then, and we have on the left-hand side two good examples of biolaminates. So those are replacing difficult to recycle laminate solutions with a compostable solution. Talked about the technical properties. You're seeing there that the printability is coming up to the levels of plastics these days. The degrees of designs you can achieve are very similar. Right-hand side at the top, some examples there of small format wrappers, which are the kind of thing which are too small to go through conventional recycling, and again, tend to be contaminated with the food that has been inside them. And an example there that two packs that were launched in the first so-called plastic-free store in London, Thornton's Budgeon, and great uses there of taking two formats which are extremely difficult to recycle. So the cheeses were in saran wrap, and the bacon is typically a polyamide to polyethylene laminate, and they were able to turn those into compostable solutions, and again with no loss of shelf life, but dealing with materials which were otherwise extremely difficult to recycle. There was a question from somebody earlier on saying, well, do you use compostables everywhere? And the answer is no, you don't, quite clearly not. The aim of compostable materials is to complement retailer and brands' packaging waste strategies. If you have a material solution, a packaging solution, which is easy to recycle and where the infrastructure is there in place, then we would say go ahead and use those sorts of things. And I would say things like beverage bottles is a perfect example of that. We wouldn't want to see compostables go in there. There is recycling of these materials. We don't solve a problem by doing so. We want to be in the areas where we're solving the difficult to recycle rather than getting in the way of existing recycling infrastructure. Quite often brands will ask us a lot of questions in terms of, is it the right thing to do to make this change, and can I actually see the difference that I'm going to make in making these changes? So we've done quite a lot of work over the years in terms of measuring renewable raw material content, life cycle assessment tools to be able to measure things like carbon footprints. We measure barrier performance as a matter of course, and of course we've made sure that all of our materials are certified for all of the end of life claims that we make. But just to give you a visual picture, using life cycle assessment techniques here, we've taken a coffee bag, and very often coffee bags are a mixed material laminate. So this particular one, 12 microns of polyester, 8 microns of aluminium foil, and 60 grams of polyethylene, 60 microns of polyethylene. And turn that then into a compostable solution. And this is a commercial pack which is on the marketplace, where that 3-layer plastic and foil construction has been converted into a metallized NatureFlex together with a biopolymer film. And if you side by side compare those, you'll see that the level of renewable raw material goes from 0% up to 70%. The carbon footprint emissions of the finished pack drop from 0.5 kg CO2 equivalents to 0.28. The barrier properties, moisture vapor transmission rate, is very, very close and perfectly suitable for coffee packing. And the oxygen transmission rate is equal to or better than the existing lamination. And then, of course, we've got the range of organic recycling solutions that will allow us to avoid landfill with these kind of solutions. So I would say that's too complicated for a consumer to understand, but it's very, very good for the brands and the retailers to know that there's that data behind the choices they're making. What you can do, though, is certainly communicate with your consumer. And what we've seen over the years of commercializing NatureFlex is tell your consumer. That's how you get the value from it. So packaging is something that we know is controversial. We know it's misunderstood. We know it has value, but consumers don't necessarily understand that. So if you're going to make the investment in compostable packaging, then let your consumer know. And here's just a few examples of different, what I've called brand education here. So the T-Pigs website has a great guide to how you spot the difference between a conventional plastic and the materials that they're using and the profile of those materials. Something a little bit different, but very much of the moment. I quite liked what I saw on the Quality Street website, where they're taking the coloured wrappers, which are all NatureFlex, from the Quality Street packs, and encouraging children and that to use it as part of the solidarity with key workers and health workers during the COVID-19 crisis, and also getting some questions there about the compostability of the materials and using their feedback system on Facebook to answer those questions. And one that I'd encourage you to go away and have a look at, a customer of ours in Germany called Samova, who've done some great marketing work, and they've been working with a German comedian, and they have a video clip which is based on the gentleman having opened his cup of tea, seen that there was a claim on the pack that this was compostable, not necessarily believing it just because it was written on the pack. So he went and researched the question, and it took him all the way to Samova themselves. And it's the story of the journey of proving the compostability. And the image that you can see there is one of the Samova tea sachets going through its biodegradation process in a matter of just a few weeks. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. That's an excellent presentation, like the others. A couple of quick questions for you. On the certification, the European standard 13432 is more or less the equivalent of the 6400 in the United States. Do you need the 6400 to sell the 13432 in the US, or can you just sell it with the 13432?
Well, I'd say probably two answers to that. First of all, yes, if you're in the US, then they're going to ask you for the ASTM standard rather than EN 13432. As a manufacturer of materials, what we tend to do is test once in a way that covers both EN 13432 and ASTM D6400. They're not identical, but they're extremely similar. And you can pretty much say, if you test to the complexity of EN 13432, you will have covered yourself at the same time for ASTM.
Thank you. The second quick one for you is NatureFlex is a bioplastic, a biopolymer, or cellophane?
Oh, I could do with a webinar just to answer that one. NatureFlex is the next generation on from cellophane. It shares the basic raw material and processing to get there, but it's been reformulated at every stage of its production in order to maximize the amount of renewable raw materials and to ensure the compostability. A bit like my earlier slide, it really does sit almost like as an intersection between paper and bioplastic. But we certainly share all of the efforts of the bioplastic industry to move forward in these particular ways, and always to substantiate any green claims that we make.
Thank you. Now I have other questions for you, but also for the other panelists. I'll keep to the end because now I wish to thank you, Andy, for that, and introduce Mark Shaw of Parkside Flexibles. And Mark is if you like, the end of the chain before it becomes a consumer product, as using biopolymers and also bioplastics. So over to you, Mark, to tell us what you do and the products that you produce.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Shaw. I work for Parkside. We're an independent flexible packaging manufacturer based in the north of England. And we also have a sister plant in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and we supply worldwide. We make a full gamut of flexible packaging. However, today I'm here to talk about our Part to Nature range of home compostable barrier laminates. So I'm going to start off with a case study. And this is based on the Planet Organic pack, which you saw earlier from Caroline's presentation. So the brief from Planet Organic was basically they wanted to move away from conventional plastic packaging, such as PTP laminates that are not recyclable, or OPP, which is not currently recyclable in a lot of areas within the UK and Europe. So the methodology, well, the pack had to perform like an existing plastic pack. It needs high barrier for extended shelf life. It requires a hermetic seal. It needs to be suitable for a wide range of dry goods. So if you saw in the pictures earlier, it was doing dried fruits, pulses, rice, nuts, and it also came in numerous pack sizes as well. It had to have good shelf presence, Most importantly, it had to be accredited home compostable, so it would break down at ambient temperature within 26 weeks via microbial action. And it needs to be GMO free in accordance with the Soil Association guidelines. So we worked with Planet Organic and we recommended our duplex barrier laminate because it needs to be a transparent bag as well, so you can see the food inside. And we worked with them and we launched the product. And so from a consumer insight, as you heard earlier, Planet Organic's customers were basically asking to move away from conventional plastic to a more sustainable focused product, which this has delivered. It's home compostable, it's GMO free. Most importantly, it runs down conventional packing lines. It runs down a horizontal form, fill and seal machine. And in certain areas actually gives improved barrier performance. So things like aroma, mineral oil barriers, actually better than the PTP laminate it was used before. And it meets with Planet Organic's customers' needs for removing plastic from their packaging. So what are our materials made from? Well, we have about 19 different accreditations for a whole host of packaging formats, but in essence, they're made up of one or all of the following products. So some of our products have paper on the outside. We only use paper from FSC and PFC accredited mills. So for every tree felled, at least one more is regrown. At the heart of our laminates is NatureFlex cellulose. Now, the next slide will go on to the reasons why that's so important in the laminate. Again, as Andy said, these are made from FSC and PFC sustainably managed forests, and Parkside are also in the chain of custody for FSC and PFC. Some of our laminates also have an additional biopolymer layer to act as an additional heat seal layer, and these are resourced from sugarcane, cassava and corn. And all our products are designed for food packaging, so they are direct food contact approved. So why NatureFlex? So if you look at the Planet Organic pack, which was a PTP laminate, the NatureFlex acts like the PT in the laminate. It gives heat resistance against the sealing jaws. It is a great print web, so it's excellent print receptivity. And it's also extremely versatile, so it can be either high barrier or permeable for certain packaging applications that need breathability. So for high barrier packs, it has resistance against aroma, grease, mineral oil, oxygen, and with the addition of metallization, good moisture barrier levels are achievable. But it can also be semi-permeable as well. So for food such as produce that have high moisture transmission, it's very good for this sort of area. It has the additional benefit that is naturally anti-mist without additional coatings. So why biolaminates? Why not just use Futamura NatureFlex on its own? For a lot of applications that works really well, but when you need improved functionality, you need to add, just like plastic laminates, why they use different layers, the same is for biolaminates for different applications. So the addition of a biopolymer can help reduce the initial sealing temperature to as little as 80 degrees. It also helps for higher weight packs. It gives strength and robustness to high weight packs. The biopolymer also adds flexibility to cellulose. So it reduces brittleness in low temperature applications. So it makes it suitable for chill and freezer applications. Again, it's got fantastic melt flow characteristics. So it's ideal for hermetic sealing, especially for products that need an airtight seal, such as vacuum pouching and gas flush packs. And again, because of the melt flow characteristics, it's very good for dusty and powders where you may get contamination of seal area. It'll melt and flow around the contamination. But most importantly, our packs are fully accredited. At the outset of our journey, we ensured that all our packs would break down microbially in ambient conditions and would be fully independently tested by OWS in Belgium and fully accredited. So our products are a bare minimum EN 13432 accredited, and they're independently tested, accredited via TÜV in Austria, the ABA in Australia, and the Seedling logo. And they're fully tested for compostability, biodegradation, and most importantly, ecotoxicity. So this is for the full printed finished pack. We get asked, well, do they actually home compost? Do they compost? Well, yeah, they do. So this is an example of our triplex barrier laminate we use for coffee. It's a very thick, high barrier laminate. As you can see there in the lab, it breaks down within 16 to 20 weeks. However, when I started this process 10 years ago to develop compostable packs, I was quite skeptical of the test method. So we actually do real life home compost testing on every pack we produce. And do you know what? They correlate extremely well. If anything, the lab test is a harder one to pass. So for example, in summer, in the north of England, our triplex biolaminate may break down between 6 and 8 weeks. And then in winter, it'll break down nearer the 26 weeks. We test both summer and winter. The test method is basically taking into account differences in quality of compost heaps, difference in temperatures between northern and southern Europe, and it's half a normal compost cycle, so it's an extremely tough test to pass. So they do work. This isn't packaging of the future, this is packaging of today. So I'm going to show you a small array of the packs that we produce, and they're on supermarket shelves today, so please go out and buy them. So this is the Planet Organic range, so this is for nuts, rice, dried fruits and pulses. We do cereal liners. We do snack bars, so fudge, chocolate, cereal bars, dried fruits. We do snack packs, so biscuits, which are extremely sensitive to moisture, dried fruits, chocolate, and health products. And we do crisps, and this is a particularly difficult product to pack due to its susceptibility to moisture, but we've done that. And we do tea and coffee. So the purple pack you see on the left is for roast and ground. That has over a year's shelf life. It's high barrier. Coffee is very susceptible to oxygen and moisture and aroma, and it gives barrier to that product. And it's available in all supermarkets. We also do instant coffee and tea. And as I said before, because our product has excellent aroma barrier, it has excellent oxygen barrier and hermetic sealing. This is a pack we've done for vacuum packing protein. So just to recap, Part to Nature is a range of high barrier, accredited home compostable laminates, which are there to replace either plastics that are not recycled or are unrecyclable. Thank you.
Well, that was short and sweet, Mark. Well done. Thank you very much. And very clear. Now, to all those people who have asked me questions about home compostability, compostability in industrial composting, composting times, etc., let me repeat for the third time that these questions will all be answered and discussed in the next webinar on the 20th of July. This webinar is talking about how we make compostable materials. We will talk in the next webinar about what happens to them when you want to get rid of them. Okay, so we'll come to those questions then. Now, can we please have all the panelists up on the screen? I have a series of questions that I'm going to throw at you. I will direct some of them to you and leave others for you to choose how you answer them. Firstly, what's the issue with GMO? Why is it so important to be GMO free? People are not understanding this.
I can just say something with it from a soil association point of view, and all our products being organic are certified by the soil association. The use of GM, whether in the food obviously or in the packaging, is forbidden if you want to get that certification. So it's a requirement from a product point of view.
Okay, anybody else want to come up on that?
I think Caroline's given the essential answer from her retail perspective. I think the most important thing in my experience throughout all of this is to be open with your customers about the sourcing of the materials. So I'm not going to get into a right or wrong over GM versus anything else, but be open, be ready to answer the questions. And my experience of the bioplastics industry is that we get given a very, very long list of questions, and it's absolutely right that we should, as far as possible, be able to answer them.
Sure, thank you.
Can I just add something there, David? That
please.
In terms of from a consumer point of view, I agree with Caroline, and also we're talking about added value within the chain, and genetically modified foods and genetic modification became a major piece of noise. Over 5 years ago, it was there, it was in the news, and I think that it was all then about adding value within our chain of feedstock, that we do not have genetically modified crops going into the feedstocks and going into the chain. Just like, again, it's about adding value.
Yes, Emily points out here, Emily Nichols, that the Soil Association does require GMO-free products for certification in organic food and farming. So that's part of the reason. Thank you. The other question I'm getting several comments about is the question of plastic-free. Andy, you've got plastic-free, and Mark on your packaging. Caroline, you spoke about plastic-free in your offer to your consumers. But several people are saying, well, this is a different type of plastic. How can you call it plastic-free? Over to you guys.
Wants to start?
I'm happy to.
I think
no, go ahead, Caroline.
Yeah, no, I just want to say from a retail point of view, and again, to emphasize on the need to promote those products that are taking the risk to pack their product in compostable, but also glass or cardboard. You can't have a shelf that has, it is long to explain what is compostable, and you need to have a simple messaging. And yes, it is controversial because we use it as a marketing tool, and I know very well the critiques against this, but the reality is that we need to educate the customer, but it starts on the base, and the base is that packaging is nature-based and will not leave detrimental waste into the soil. So yes, it is a marketing tool, and I completely appreciate the critique. I think it's just a simple messaging for customers to make the right sustainable choices.
I think that's the best answer. I mean, as a packaging technologist, it's a problematic phrase, but you have a second to engage your consumer from the brand perspective. So I think the important thing then is, if you're going to make that claim, that you know that you can point out it's not a conventional plastic material, it's got all of the independent certifications in place for compostability, it's renewable resources, and so on and so on. But all of that data is going to take so much space on a supermarket shelf. You need that behind the scenes and a catchy title at the front.
Okay, but we should remind everybody that bioplastics, most bioplastics are defined under the Single-Use Plastics Directive of the European Commission as plastics. So I think it is our duty to remind people of that.
Yep.
Another question maybe for you, Andy, and Mark as brands. How do you take the position of a supermarket chain like Tesco? Maybe Kieran as well. Because for those who don't know, Tesco's in the UK have said that they do not wish to have compostable packaging offered in their products. And I think it's fair to ask that question.
Have I to start?
Go ahead, Mark.
Actually, the rationale behind this is that they perceive that there is no infrastructure for compostable packaging, which obviously you'll discuss at the next webinar and show that that's not true. But why is not the same rationale used for plastic packaging? Because in the UK, there's virtually no recyclable stream for multi-layer plastic packaging. So I would say, as we said before, compostable packaging is part of the solution and should not be overlooked.
Anyone else?
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, and if Tesco were listening, I'd be saying to them, the key thing is a point I made earlier. Compostable packaging is complementary to other forms of packaging. Used in the right place, you're going to solve problems that you can't solve with other forms of packaging. So it shouldn't be an either or, it should be an and situation. The right materials in the right applications going to the right infrastructure.
Thank you. And I think the last question really I have for the panel is perhaps more for you, Caroline. You mentioned this before. The question of reduction. One thing is substituting materials which can't be recycled, which with compostable materials that you hope will be composted. Another is, of course, reduction. And one or two people have asked this. You have done a big job on reduction. What more do you think that we can do as a community and retailers to reduce our overall packaging use?
I think it will go through regulations, which is the first thing. If you go in France and you shop in a French organic shop, you'll notice the difference. I think it has to go through incentives for customers to actually make the choices that are sustainable choices. So you want to have maybe you ban paper cups, or I guess the unpackaged is a great example of what can be done to reduce packaging, because you don't need any packaging for those. It has to go. I think the burden right now is a lot on retailer and brands. It has to go hand in hand with regulations, and it's well good to ban the earbuds or the straw, but I think it has to go a step further. All our stores have 3 sets of bins. So you have recycling, compost, and general waste. It's still quite a rare sight when you go into cafes or normal supermarkets. And there's not a straight answer, fortunately. I think what we've tried to do at Planet Organic is have at that all those touch points that customers go through in the consumer journey, be it online or be it in the store or being at events, is promoting those sustainable choices. So if you receive an online delivery from Planet Organic, you'll have it in a cardboard with compostable pillows to avoid the damages. So it's having that supply chain and all those touch points from customers, offering them a sustainable choice.
And of course, you did mention to me the other day that you are willing to help or advise other retailers and other brands who wish to go down this route, because I think your experience on the challenges and the opportunities there is quite invaluable.
Yeah, retailers need to promote those brands that are making the efforts, and that's definitely what our buyers are trying to do throughout their sourcing processes.
Thank you. I have something there, David, that from the consumer side as well. I think what we do know and what we have seen is that the variety of surveys that have been done certainly over the last couple of years, customers and consumers out there tell us that they do want to have compostable products, and I think that's really important. I know that we have all the issues around infrastructure, which we're going to cover at a separate date. We're not going to go into now, and food waste collection in 2023 will affect that, and by virtue of that will affect. We were talking a moment ago about retailers and their packaging strategies. That will affect the retailers' packaging strategies as that infrastructure grows, and then that will affect the products coming onto shelf, which actually is all about then delivering what customers and everyone everyone in the marketplace. People say customers are king, and we want to deliver what consumers want. Consumers tell us that they want compostable packaging. Andy makes the point earlier, but we as an industry are saying, yes, that's great, but we put it in the right place. That's also really important. We put it in the right applications in the right place, and we deliver what the customer wants
Yes, I think it's important, Kieran, also that even if everybody wanted to have compostable plastics, we'd never be able to make enough. So we have to put it in the right place, otherwise
it's the right place. Absolutely.
Yeah. One more technical question, and then I'm going to ask you all a last general question. And many people are asking Andy and Mark about things like the inks and the glues and the additives. And I know that for your compostable certification, you have to go through non-toxicity tests, but what sort of assurance can you give to people who say, well, you know, I'll be sure that everything that is used in this material is non-toxic? Now, of course, nobody ever asked that about plastics, but of course they asked them about bioplastics. Excuse the barb.
So I'll start. So part of the accreditation is it's fully tested for ecotoxicity, and that includes inks, adhesives, and everything that goes into the pack. And they will randomly test our packaging. They'll buy it from shelf and they will test it again and again. So you can be tested randomly at any time, and that pack has to fulfill the same criteria as when it was originally tested and approved.
I don't think there's anything to add to that, David. That's absolutely right. It is, you know, I've sold conventional plastic materials and compostable materials throughout my career, and the degree of complexity involved in the composting testing is huge. The amount of work that we do in our industry to cover off all of those questions is very, very significant. It's an onerous task, but it has to be done. And EN 13432 and the other standards are draconian. You do not get through those materials if you're not a compostable material. They are very, very tough standards to pass.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Mark. Last question for all of you. Kieran, you spoke about your factories and the laws in Italy, France, and Spain. Mark and Caroline and Andy, you've spoken about consumer demand. We saw a survey published on 2 days ago, which I think 87% of the 2,000 people interviewed said they want compostable packaging. So is all this leading to more investments? Is all this leading to greater demand? And are you investing as companies? Do you see a good future for these materials?
Yeah, I'll start on that, David. Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, the charts I put up showed the legislation, but the legislation is because there is a compulsory use of these materials developing right across Europe, and with that compulsory use becomes the increased demand. So yes, we as a business, we as a group are investing both in our manufacturing in our plant, the biotech plant I spoke about earlier. And not only that, we're also then investing in our processing as well, in our factories, in our conversion factories. So yeah, we're gearing up for further growth both across Europe and here in the UK, where I do see the snowball getting bigger and bigger.
The same thing from our perspective. So we're expanding our US plant right at this minute. There's two stages to NatureFlex. There's the production of the base film, and then there's the coating process. We're increasing our coating output in the UK operation by the end of this year, and we've just announced that we're increasing casting capacity as well in the next 2 years. So yes, the demand is growing very, very strongly.
And I'd agree with that. We're seeing excellent growth in the last 2 to 3 years, and we continue to invest in R&D to open up different avenues for compostable packaging and different end users.
From a retail point of view and the brands, so our stores are based in London. You can imagine that the London consumer is already well aware. So there's definitely a growing demand. We'll be launching more initiatives in stores with merchandising and sourcing processes. And as a brand, we'll be launching soon, actually in the summer, a new range of bars packed in home compostable, because we know that snacking and single use is a need, and commercially it is a need as well. So yeah, we'll be growing that offering as well as we can, and hoping for some changes in the government and waste management, obviously.
Good. Well, thank you to the four speakers, and I thank you to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening in, and I hope that it's helped you understand more where compostable packaging comes from. There are a lot of questions which we haven't been able to answer because some of them are very technical and because we don't have all day. So I'm going to give you now my email address, my personal email address, to which you can send your questions, and I will circulate them amongst the speakers, or if they are not able to respond to them, to our technical colleagues who will try to do their best to respond to you. So if you have a pen and a paper ready, my personal email address is dn@bbia.org.uk. dn@bbia.org.uk. And I will do my best to get back to you in the next few days with replies to your questions. This is, again, to remind you, 20th of July, we will be talking with the end of life part of this cycle. So a lot of your questions there around how we talk about home composting, composting cycles, 4 weeks to 26 weeks, soil and water, degradability, etc., will be answered in this, or will be discussed in this webinar. Then there will be a third and fourth webinar after the summer break in August, in September, in which we will talk about policies. Then we will have a third one, a final webinar, in which you will be able to shoot your questions at a panel in an Ask BBIA and its members session. And we will have a panel of BBIA members to whom you can fire away all your questions and all your doubts around compostable packaging. That will be announced in the near future. That's enough, I think, from us. Thank you all very much for attending, and thank you to the speakers again.